9 buckets, if you will, of topics. That was a lot. And Elaine Quijano, was asking substantive questions, but there weren't a ton of follow-ups. And because she had to move on, I think, to all of these different elements, it seemed like some of the argument that could have been developed deeper was left on the table.
Well, just as you were waiting for the follow-up from the other candidate, like, yeah, what does he have to say about that? She would move on to the next topic. And the next topic sometimes was a topic that they had earlier discussed. So, you have, obviously, listening is as important as speaking when you're moderating these debates. And controlling the candidates is also important so that they don't talk over each other. She tried. In my experience, you got to shut them down early. You got to shut them down early. Like, teach them the rules at the beginning. Like, don't make me hit you, and then we'll be fine.
Newspaper to the snout, or what?
In my experience, this works fine.
Let's bring in our panel. Tucker Carlson is here with us in the spin room. Dana Perino and Juan Williams are back in New York. All right, Tucker, your impressions, your thoughts.
It was a tough night for Kaine. I mean, I think he entered it with the presumption of decency. I think most people think he is a decent guy. He's not a natural debater, much less so even than I thought. I think the physical posturing, the interruptions did not work well. But fundamentally, it was tough because he is in the position of defending the status quo. He's there representing, in effect, the incumbent. And the status quo is very unpopular, which is why this whole election is unfolding as it is. So that was difficult. I thought in the end, the introduction of partial birth abortion, it wasn't simply abortion, and the country is split on that. The country is not split on third trimester abortion. However, it's very against it. And I thought that was a really revealing moment. That is the kind of thing that Republicans in the past 10 years have been very hesitant to do, to bring up. They're very uncomfortable with it.
Mike Pence is never uncomfortable.
He is not, but the uncomfortable man on the stage tonight on that topic was Tim Kaine, much more than I expected. He seemed unprepared for it, and he seemed almost squirming in his seat. It'll be interesting to see what the polls reveal, but I thought that was, wow, kind of a moment.
That was, of course, an issue. I mean, Trump is on camera back in the day saying he was in favor of partial abortion. Now he says he's not. But that is one of the issues on which he's been hit for flip-flopping. Yep. Although today the party tickets seem clearly divided on the issue of abortion. At least they tell us that. Dana Perino is with us as well in New York. Your thoughts, Dana?
Well, I think that Mike Pence will probably be the one that is declared the winner of tonight's debate and the performance. I think it was a reminder to a lot of Republicans who, back before there were 17 candidates in 2015 for the primary, Mike Pence was considered one of the Republicans that many people thought would be good to be at the top of the ticket, and there was a lot of disappointment when he decided that he was going to not run for president and was going to stay and try to run for re-election in Indiana as the governor. So tonight I think he did a really good job. I do think that there will be a lot of post-debate analysis of things that he was asked to defend that Donald Trump had actually said, that then he sort of let go and would focus back on Clinton. I thought that was good. Two things I thought were a big missed opportunity. We did not hear a lot about Obamacare, and I actually think that just for both of them, that is something that they could have brought up because President Obama will be speaking about it tomorrow. And then the second thing is just a big overall changes that the American economy is about to face and how these two men would try to guide the next president who is going to have to deal with this oncoming of technology changes and robotics. That is not just trade that's going to change the landscape, but all of those things that they talked about in the primary. Sort of missed opportunity tonight, I thought.
Yeah. Senator Kaine probably didn't want to talk about Obamacare after former President Clinton said what he said about it being crazy that small businesses are taking it on the chin, especially in, Midwest states.
He was saying it works for the working class, but not for the middle class.
So, Juan, what about Tim Kaine's performance? I saw some on social media saying that this was like Al Gore in 2000. It was kind of annoying.
I didn't think so at all. In fact, I was impressed, especially when he was talking about abortion. I think that's going to be in the headlines tomorrow because we so rarely see that debated on this kind of stage because everybody's so afraid to say the wrong thing. And tonight, I think it was really something to hear Senator Kaine talk about his religious faith and then say, what about Donald Trump saying women who have an abortion should be punished? And I think that put Governor Pence on his heels. And I think a lot of the interrupting that you've been talking about, a lot of the emphasis on the tax and the refusal to release the taxes kept Governor Pence back on his heels. Where I thought Governor Pence did well was when he was saying, hey, wait a second, let's look at the reality of the situation. For example, in dealing with race and the cops, and he came back to the idea of standing with law enforcement, standing with the police, delivering a clear message. Even in that situation, though, what you heard from Tim Kaine was, are you trying to suggest that there is no bias involved in sentencing and arrest records and the like. And again, what you saw was that the governor had difficulty coming to terms with it. So even as he was interrupting, if that was the strategy, he was continually pushing the governor against the ropes, and I think the governor was stuttering and stammering and trying to come to some agreement about it, some understanding, like a situation like Syria, unable to come to explanation of what it means to have a safe zone. I think that's what people are going to take away from this.
I don't want to interrupt you, but on Facebook and Twitter, about 60% of the conversation, we're told, was about Governor Pence. They don't say whether that's positive or negative, but it is a lot of focus on him. Well,
speaking of Twitter, Tucker Carlson, as the two candidates on stage were arguing over who was driving a more insult-driven campaign, right? That's what they were arguing about. Donald Trump was insulting Tim Kaine and tweeting out, retweeting people who had tweeted, "Kaine looks like an evil crook out of the Batman movies." And then Trump retweeted another person saying that Tim Kaine looked like a fool, which led comedian John Lovett to say Trump is insulting people at the same moment Mike Pence is dodging questions about Trump insulting people.
Yes. Well, Mr. Trump is now at the center of this conversation again tonight.
What a shock.
He wasn't on stage. But they were kind of making parallel arguments. So Kaine he made it consistently from beginning to end, the argument that Trump has disqualified himself by the things that he has said. They are so unattractive, so appalling that he can't be president. Pence was making the argument that Hillary has disqualified herself by the things that she has done. They have been so ineffectual. They haven't worked. She's responsible for the America we're all dissatisfied with. And so it was kind of a stark contrast. I mean, and they each have a case, I think, but they were arguing past one another. I mean, you didn't see Pence say really anything about what Hillary has said, and you didn't see Kaine say anything about what Trump has done.
Well, he struck back saying she has called half of our supporters deplorable.
Well, that's
so
right.
He
for a moment, but mostly, I mean, of course, Trump doesn't hold office, so perhaps that's part of it. But really, this was about turnout, in my view, from beginning to end. You saw Kaine repeating ugly things that Trump has said about aimed at African Americans, Latinos, and unmarried women, and those are the three groups they need to turn out.
Dana, at the end, Pence came back to what we thought he was going to come back to, and that is change. That Mike Pence, Donald Trump are change, and Hillary Clinton is the establishment, the ultimate establishment. And did he make that case? I mean, he tried to make it that she was Secretary of State and the world is falling apart under President Obama at the beginning, and then tried to drive it home at the end that he's changed.
I don't know if it will stick, but I agree with Tucker that the easier job tonight was certainly for the out-party candidate, which is actually really not Pence, but Trump. And he was saying that, I was there 12 years, and I know that there's a possibility to actually make some progress and make some change and do some things that would be amazing and make America great again. He was short on sort of canned answers, and I think that Kaine was so over-practiced, and some of the lines were like, okay, come on. Obviously, they're so practiced. Pence is very smooth, and so if you're listening to it, you think, gosh, somebody like that who just sort of tells it like it is and is just more comfortable in their skin than a regular, typical establishment politician might be an attractive candidate. I don't think that either of them expanded beyond their bases tonight. I don't know if Kaine was able to fire up the minority community or millennials, because they know that they have a problem there, and I don't know if he hit anything out of the park. I think Pence will be clearly seen to be the winner of this particular debate.
Dana Perino, are you feeling emotional this evening? I noticed the tear, just a single tear rolling down your face.
I have chronic dry eye, and it's horrible. And only this one will leak, and this one's dry, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm sorry.
Dana,
I thought you were hearkening back to, like Bush Cheney. Remember when they were out there?
It's over, Dana. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, Dana, Juan, Tucker, thank you very much.
Coming up, we're going to hear from both sides on tonight's debate.
Mike Huckabee and Lanny Davis will join us live with their take. Live coverage from the campus of Longwood University, not Norwood, Longwood University.
Former special counsel now to President Bill Clinton, Lanny Davis, along with former Arkansas governor and former presidential candidate Mike Huckabee, Fox News contributor. Great to see you both. Lanny, let me start with you. By our unofficial count from our Fox News producers, Tim Kaine interrupted 39 times. Mike Pence interrupted 19 times. Do you think that's going to play well with the women at home who are such a critical voting bloc as between these two candidates at the top of the ticket?
I wasn't counting. There were a lot of interruptions on both sides. But I'll tell you what won't play well. Mike Pence ran against Donald Trump tonight. Tim Kaine ran against Donald Trump tonight. There were more disagreements by Governor Pence versus Donald Trump. He disagrees with Trump on criminalizing women who terminate pregnancies. He disagrees with Trump's constant praise of Putin. He disagrees with a deportation
force. Trump walked the punishment for abortion comment back.
I am saying that what I heard tonight, and even my good friend Dana Perino wistfully wants to think about Pence being on top of the ticket. What you saw tonight is two very good debaters. I respect both of them, both running against Donald Trump. It was amusing to even see the panelists who are Republicans not defending Trump but saying that Pence did very well, disagreeing with Trump. Even Rich Lowry noted that. So for me, this is great. Donald Trump lost, and Pence and Kaine both did very well.
Governor Huckabee, your response to that?
Well, first of all, Rich Lowry is not a Trump fan, so I don't think I would take that. But, you know, I think sometimes those of us who are in this game, we listen to very carefully the words that are said. But undecided voters tend to look at these candidates as to how they say those words. And tonight, it was very, very clear that Tim Kaine was planned and canned. Mike Pence, ready and relaxed. It was the difference between a glass of vinegar and a glass of Southern sweet tea. Tim Kaine looked incredibly uncomfortable. He seemed to be irritated. He did not seem to be having a good time. He was giving a speech. Mike Pence was having a conversation. And that's how it came across. I think clearly when Tim Kaine left the stage tonight, he went straight to Waffle House. He was hungry because Mike Pence ate his lunch.
Lanny, let me ask you something about foreign policy here, Lanny. Lanny, let me just ask you something about foreign policy. 3 times, Senator Kaine said that Hillary Clinton worked to eliminate Iran's nuclear program, and then said that the Israelis signed on to that elimination of Iran's nuclear weapons program. Do you believe that that's, in fact, happened?
I never heard the word sign off. I heard... and I can be corrected on that, Brett, but Governor Kaine mentioned specific Israeli... Well, yes, that is the goal, to eliminate, and right now they are not developing...
But it hasn't happened.
Excuse me. Right now they are not developing a nuclear weapon. Before this treaty, they were this close. And we heard Israeli intelligence being quoted by the governor agreeing with that. But can we get back to my question to the two of you? When I hear Megyn Kelly, who I respect greatly, who is the subject of vicious attacks by Donald Trump with horrible use of words, and we hear Governor Pence constantly say insults about Hillary Clinton when facts about Donald Trump are called insults, I'd like to really ask Megyn Kelly whether you felt a certain sense of satisfaction that all the insults hurled at you by by Donald Trump are now being called insults rather than Governor Pence decrying the kind of personal insults that he gave to Jeb Bush, to John Kasich, and even to you when you moderated the debate.
Well, the beauty of being the anchor is I get to ask the questions and not answer them. But thank you for that, Lanny. I'll put the question to you, Governor Huckabee, about the fact that Pence didn't take on the litany of insults that Tim Kaine was listing. He didn't try to defend Donald Trump on all of those. He basically just said Hillary's insulted half of our supporters as a basket of deplorables. And then the response from Tim Kaine was, but then she apologized for that. When has Donald Trump apologized for his remarks about Mexicans and John McCain and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I don't think most of the voters really care whether Donald Trump apologizes. I think they're tired of watching Barack Obama apologize for America all over the world and bow to foreign leaders. They want a person who's strong. Do they agree with him all the time? Probably not. But I thought Mike Pence tonight did a masterful job of defending Donald Trump and the Republican ticket.
Really, Mike, really?
Governor Huckabee, Lanny, thank you. That does it for our coverage tonight. The vice presidential debate is over, but we have post coverage starting.
Appointments available now.
Breaking tonight, the first and only vice presidential debate is now in the books. And while both campaigns are saying their guy scored the most points, a lot of debate watchers are expressing frustration with what at times became a free-for-all. Welcome to a special live 11 p.m. edition of the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Thanks for staying up late. Reporting tonight from Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. The two candidates left this stage about 20 minutes ago. They covered a lot of ground tonight and spent a lot. We have a big show lined up for you tonight. Donald Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, is here. So is Hillary Clinton's national press secretary, Brian Fallon. We'll also get Charles Krauthammer's key takeaways and so much more. But we begin the night with Chris Stirewalt, our Fox News digital politics editor, and Howie Kurtz, host of Media Buzz on Fox News. Great to see you both.
Howdy.
Chris, your thoughts?
No hits, no runs, no errors. They did their job, which was to not make news. I think Pence had a better night. Kaine was interrupty, overmodulated, too hot coming in, couldn't quite settle down. But look, they were here to not harm the ticket, and they did their jobs, and they can walk out with their heads held high.
Before we get to Howie, on the subject of interrupty. Here is a flavor of that.
It's one of those things where you can tell that Kaine had all these lines that he wanted to get in. He was like, ooh, and I'll say that, ooh, and I'll say this, and ooh, and I'll say the other thing. And then it was just too much when he couldn't quite handle it.
And there were questions online about where was the moderator? Where was the control?
I got to tell you, Megyn, I love politics, but this debate made my head hurt. Unfortunately, Elaine Quijano, the moderator from CBS, let this get careen utterly out of control. Tim Kaine interrupting Mike Pence far more often without much admonition from the moderator. But here's the thing, as Chris was just saying, I mean, Tim Kaine was so determined to throw out as many grenades against Donald Trump as he could, even if they exploded around his body, that in another reference to 9/11, he somehow turned it around to Donald Trump didn't pay his taxes and Mexican rapists. And he kept bringing these things up again and again. Mike Pence, who's a former radio talk show host, tried not to take the bait on every attack against Trump, tried to be a little more...
He took no bait, really.
Yeah,
right.
Which opens him up to accusations about not defending his guy, but he came across a little more modulated, a little more dignified. I think as time went on, Kaine lost this debate because his attacks were less forceful as they became so scattershot.
What do you make of the Lowry theory, that Kaine lost? He didn't care whether he won or lost. He just wanted to mention dogs, pigs, slobs, taxes as many times as humanly possible.
Get there and say the words. Look, these are two very traditional, very normal, very mainstream candidates who are running on a ticket with people who are not normal candidates. These are people who are...
Abnormal.
Right. They're quite, for good or for ill.
So are we. We can relate.
Quite so. But their job is to show normalcy, and they did that. And Kaine and Pence both did this. They both steered around the fundamental questions and issues for their candidates. There was a lot of non-answering that was going on tonight. You sort of expect that, but I think they both ably dodged.
Yeah, they did. They were able dodgers.
Able dodgers.
Great to see you both. Well, as Donald Trump watched this debate, he live tweeted his reaction to what we saw on stage. And we have Trump's hottest takes for you tonight. Joining me now from just outside the debate hall, our chief political correspondent, Carl Cameron. Carl?
Hi, Megyn. Well, Trump tweeted 44 times, including retweets, in that 90-minute debate, which means basically at least once every 2 minutes. And among them, there were some pretty good doozies. They go something like this. Wow, Kaine couldn't go 12 seconds without a lie. Marines are scared of the liar running. He retweeted, Kaine looks like an evil crook out of Batman movies. Then there was Kaine says Hillary and he have plans. She could care less what Kaine thinks. Loving Mike Pence, he's so likable and sensible. Kaine's just talking bull. Hillary Clinton sneers at millions of average Americans. Clinton's close ties to Putin deserve scrutiny. Then there's Kaine's awful. Trump and Pence are the ticket. No more lies. We're ready to see America great again. And he ultimately ended it up congratulating Mike Pence for what he said was a victory. And at one point, he actually criticized the moderator, something that we're likely to hear a lot of in the next couple of days. Megyn?
Carl, good to see you. Well, political analysts suggesting that Senator Kaine's main objective tonight would be to turn Governor Mike Pence into Donald Trump and force Mr. Pence to answer for all of Trump's controversies. Fulfilling those reports, Senator Kaine did not hold back, using several opportunities to bring up a laundry list of Trump controversies. Watch. Now, Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, great to see you.
Hi, Megan.
So what do you make of that exchange where Kaine's response was she took responsibility for what she said and apologized?
No, she didn't.
And is suggesting Trump never has apologized to anybody for anything.
But she didn't, and that's not fair. Let me break it down this way. First of all, because she got caught on tape at a fundraiser with her donors, which is how she usually spends her time, insulting tens of millions of Americans, calling them a basket of deplorables and irredeemable at that. You add to that the Bernie Sanders voters, who we since heard again in a fundraiser or a donor's pitch, where she insulted them as basement dwellers who have this fantastic idea.
She said they're in the basement struggling to make something out of their lives. She didn't say basement dwellers.
It didn't sound very nice. It didn't sound very complimentary. And even Bernie Sanders said he had a hard time listening to that. But the fact is, this woman has disdain for people, in part, and then he said he had a hard time hearing that. But look, Megan, it's very simple. American people know that she has insulted people, that she has disdain for lots of Americans. And I like the fact that Mike Pence brought that up, because the reason he used the word fraction was very clear, that Tim Kaine wants to talk about this comment or that comment by Donald Trump, and yet you have a woman running for president of the United States who has expressed disdain for lots of Americans, and that's why he used the word fraction. The other thing that was happening there is Tim Kaine was never answering the question. He came ready to have spill out of his mouth this unending flow of sound bites and canned responses. They came off terrible. There he was interrupting a female moderator. We lost track of the time. We just stopped writing it down. He was interrupting.
You can interrupt a female moderator, same as a male.
Well, no, it's the Clinton campaign who loves to throw around words like sexism and unhinged. They've got to be regretting those words on a night like tonight when Tim Kaine looked like both.
They got into a long discussion about Putin and what Trump has said about Putin and what he hasn't said, and we have that exchange teed up, and then we have a bit of a fact check. Watch.
On control over a country.
So Trump, he did say that Putin was a leader and compared him favorably to President Obama, and even Mike Pence actually came out and said it's inarguable that Putin is a stronger leader than Obama.
Meaning in their respective countries. Yes, I mean, I'm sorry.
What do you mean?
Well,
Putin is a strong leader. Well, do you believe that? Does Donald Trump believe he's a strong leader?
He said he's
that the people follow him because they feel inspired.
And Obama is here, and you just heard Mike Pence use the words feckless leadership. There's no question that we're respected less around the world. There's no question that if Donald Trump and Mike Pence are president and vice president, that the American exceptionalism, the peace through strength, in America first.
But Kellyanne, you understand where this argument goes. I mean, Putin's had journalists shot in the street. So it's a little jarring for people to hear him praised by Donald Trump as a strong leader, stronger than President Obama.
He's stronger there than he is here. And he also says, if you play the full clip, Megan, he also says in the Commander-in-Chief forum, different forum, that he says that I don't necessarily agree with that system of government. That's what Donald Trump said. I was there that night. He says, but he's a strong leader there than Obama is here. Nobody thinks Obama's a strong leader. I mean, if Obama were a strong leader, a Secretary of State would have 55%. Why in the new CNN poll is Hillary Clinton at 53% among women? She's running as the first female president. There's something holding her back, and I frankly
think she's beating Donald Trump by some 20 points with women. I mean, why is Donald Trump at 32%?
Not really. Not in all polls.
Kellyanne.
But she's got a gender gap of her own.
She does. She's losing with
gender gap over men.
She has a huge gap. There's absolutely no question about that. But you're sitting here suggesting why are her numbers low with women, and you work for Donald Trump.
Right, she's the first
His numbers are historically low for a Republican nominee with women. Historically low.
Well, Mitt Romney lost women by 11 points, and John McCain lost.
Mitt Romney's numbers are crushing Donald Trump's numbers with women.
It's not election day yet. Why are we winning Ohio and Iowa?
There's 35 days to go, Kellyanne. I mean, the criticism of Donald Trump is that he could win this race, and that he was doing well, and he was rebounding, and his numbers in various states were rebounding. And then he went after Miss Universe and talked about her being too fat and talked about women's looks again. And women don't like that, so according to these polls.
I guess I would focus on why we're here, which is the vice presidential debate. I thought Mike Pence did a fabulous job.
Which is all about who
tonight.
Should be elected president.
Well, but Megyn, in fairness to Donald Trump, his very first execution of leadership and judgment was what after he became the nominee? His selection of Governor Mike Pence as his running mate. And America saw tonight how wonderful that selection is, because this man, as governor of Indiana, has cut taxes for employers and individuals. The unemployment rate was slashed in half. He's expanded school choice and charters. He's brought manufacturing jobs back. I worked with Mike Pence for probably 10 years as his Colson senior advisor. The guy will make a fabulous vice president. And you juxtapose him against Tim Kaine tonight, who basically spent most of his career in government services is no stranger to the debate stage. Yeah. And you think that Tim Kaine's performance tonight is going to sit well with women? I think what you're going to hear from
that was my first question to Larry Davis.
I think you're going to hear from all the pundits tonight. These vice presidential debates don't really matter. They won't move the polls because they know how lopsided the victory was for Mike Pence.
I got to go because I got a Clinton campaign representative coming up. We're going to talk about that. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So for his part, Governor Mike Pence made the case against Hillary Clinton in a way that some critics wanted Donald Trump to do during last week's presidential debate. Here was one exchange getting a lot of attention. Brian Fallon is the National Press Secretary for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. He's with me now. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you make of that? Because you heard Kellyanne make the point, it was my question to Lanny Davis, whether these women that both campaigns are fighting for, right, who could make the difference in this election, are going to like how interrupty, to borrow Steyerwalt's word, he was. I mean, constantly interrupting.
Well, a running mate has two jobs in a debate like this. Number one is to defend your candidate, the person at the top of the ticket. And I thought Tim Kaine was hugely effective at defending Hillary Clinton when she came under false attacks from Mike Pence, helping make the affirmative case about what Clinton-Kaine administration would do on the economy. And then secondly, you need to make the case against the other person on the other side of the ballot. And I thought that he was extremely effective at making the case about why Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be president. And the reason he was so effective was he was citing Trump's own words. And what was most notable, I thought, was that Mike Pence was sort of not engaging at those points. Whether
was that, and let me get to Pence in 1 second, but was that a strategy to have him, it doesn't matter how many times he interrupts, just keep saying these few core messages or launching these few core attacks over and over again?
Well, look, it's easy to seem agreeable if you're not making any case on behalf of your candidate. And Mike Pence, I thought, sort of sat out major portions of the debate where Tim Kaine was calling out statements that Donald Trump has made. And I thought that was perfectly reasonable. And I thought that what was notable was that Mike Pence didn't seem interested in defending some of Donald Trump's more outrageous comments. It seemed like he made a conclusion coming into tonight that he didn't want to have to defend the indefensible.
He did make a reference at one point to the fact that, listen, this is not a professional politician. He hasn't lived the past, several decades running for office and watching everything he says.
Well, look, just take an issue like Russia. I mean, Donald Trump has gone around in the course of this campaign and he's expressed admiration for Vladimir Putin. He's essentially endorsed a wish list of pro-Putin policies. He suggested we should withdraw from NATO, which would put our Eastern European allies at risk. And then tonight we heard a completely different message from Mike Pence. He was talking about how Putin was a bully and he was small. I mean, at the next debate, I hope that Donald Trump will be asked if he agrees with what Mike Pence said. And I think that showed that Mike Pence had his own agenda tonight. And to me, it almost meant that he was auditioning for 2020 more than he cared about electing Donald Trump in 2016.
What about Hillary Clinton's point tonight suggesting that she and President Obama have stopped Iran's nuclear program? I mean, no one thinks it's stopped. At best, it's been curbed at absolute best, but it hasn't been shut down.
Oh, look, there is no question that as a result of the deal that was struck by the Obama administration last year, that we have suspended and put on hold the complete ambitions of the Iran regime to acquire nuclear weapons. The status quo was not going to be tenable, and I think that we are much
stopped. The capability is not gone. At best, it's been paused. It hasn't been stopped. It's been curbed, but it's still in operation. You know that.
We are on much safer footing today vis-a-vis Iran.
But that's a different
statement.
That's a different statement. What he said tonight is factually wrong.
I don't think that's true at all.
You believe the Iranian nuclear program has stopped. That's her position and your position.
Yes.
It's stopped. It's over.
Yeah, well...
Congratulations.
Well, no, Kelly, let's be clear. We're not suggesting that the Iranians don't continue to harbor ambitions to pursue nuclear weapons, but their capability to pursue that nuclear program is completely off now. And that's why Hillary Clinton has said we need to take a distrust but verify approach. She doesn't suddenly believe that Iran is an ally of any kind. They're continuing to fund terrorism in the region. They're continuing to sow instability all across the Middle East. And so, yes, absolutely, they still have a mind to pursue nuclear weapons, but they're not going to be able to do so under this agreement.
Let's pick up on the last point that I was discussing with Kellyanne, which is the women, right? And there's a gender gap, and that's true. Trump is definitely struggling with women. But Hillary Clinton is struggling worse with men. The gender gap is worse on her end in getting men. And you tell me what she's going to do, if anything, between now and November 8th to reach out to them.
Well, we always are seeking to reach out to voters that are not currently supporting Hillary Clinton. We're going to continue to do that. But if you look at some of the national polls that came out just yesterday, she is making complete inroads with male voters. And I think that the gap is so much more pronounced among women voters that it's a point where Donald Trump can't recover if those numbers stay the same in terms of that gender gap. And so it's Donald Trump that has more repair work to do with women voters. That's why Hillary Clinton was today in Delaware County in Pennsylvania making the case to women, a lot of them probably Mitt Romney voters in 2012, on issues like pay equity, paid family leave, child care, with her daughter there, with Elizabeth Banks there. I think that was extremely powerful, and that gender gap is going to be irrecoverable for Donald Trump. And unfortunately, tonight there is nothing that Mike Pence could say that would change that dynamic for Donald Trump.
Okay, so you see no game changer this evening.
It's impossible for the number twos to change the dynamic. The problem is the guy at the top, Donald Trump.
Great to see you, Brian. Thanks for being here. Well, there's a lot more just ahead, including from Charles Krauthammer, who says there's one clear loser in tonight's debate, and you might be surprised who that is. Plus, David Wohl and Mo Alethi are next on who came out ahead in a powerful exchange over policing and race. And then Mark Thiessen and Austin Goolsbee weigh in on what happened when this debate went nuclear. Don't miss this. As you just heard, Donald Trump's tax returns became a heated point of contention between Mike Pence and Tim Kaine tonight. And it's an issue that we could hear more of as we look ahead to the second presidential debate on Sunday, 5 days away. Joining me now, Dr. Charles Krauthammer, syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor. Charles, great to see you. So first, let's just start with, separate and apart from that exchange, your overall thoughts on how the debate went.
Well, unfortunately, the big loser was the moderator. I don't envy her position, but she lost control of the debate very early. The candidates were talking over each other. And this is a pet peeve I have with all moderators, not just this one, although it was worse than this one. You know, towards the end, you were getting really good exchanges of the kind where they were going at each other, quite revealing. And she would say, we have to stop and go on to another subject, to which I would say, why? Who cares about hitting all the points and all? At one point, I was watching some other folks who burst out laughing when she said, yes, but we were going to talk about North Korea. Well, that's less interesting than talking about the top of the ticket. Look, I thought in the end it obviously didn't move the needle because they were each trying to do something completely different and to some extent succeeded. Kaine was trying to spread a little nuclear, well, I wouldn't call them nuclear, conventional explosives all over the place by mentioning all the misstatements, outrageous statements that Trump had said. And it's clear that Pence had made a decision not to go down the rabbit hole on every one of these, because otherwise he never would have talked about anything else. But it did make him look defensive. And I didn't do a content analysis, but I would guess that most of the time it was spent defending, or at least with the Pence-Trump team, on the defense. What Kaine tried to do was simply to say, this guy is unreliable, that this guy has the wrong temperament. But Pence's strategy, and I thought he won on tone, he was always calm and collected. It was a kind of Reagan saying to Carter, there you go again, was to simply say, well, perhaps my guy has made misstatements, but your candidate and her people have been in charge for 8 years and in a larger sense for 30 years. And look where we are. Look at the state of the world. And that's what he concentrated on. What he has said, that's what Kaine was talking about. But what Pence talked about is what she had done and not done. And I thought on that, enumerating, for example, the failures with Russia, he did very well.
What do you make of the notion that Trump could be, that the questions about his temperament can be answered or at least assuaged by this calm, cool, collected running mate?
I think to some extent, if you've got a very hot candidate, what you want is a cool number two. You want something to say, well, there's, for example, if Trump had chosen Newt Gingrich, I think he said they were both pirates. And you don't want a two-pirate ticket. You want one guy to be the pirate and the other guy to be the justice of the peace or perhaps even a minister. And to some extent, Pence presented himself sort of like a minister, reasonable, very serious answer, I thought, at the very end on the question of religion. So I think that helps the ticket to whatever extent the vice president can. Unfortunately, he or she usually doesn't.
What did you make of the fact that Trump was tweeting during the debate, calling Tim Kaine names?
That means that the Trump campaign has not succeeded in taking away his cell phone. And that remains like job number one for Kellyanne and the rest of the gang. It was harmless, at least the ones you showed on the screen. But he has shown in the last week that he can tweet in a way that can be very harmful to him. And I don't think he ought to be allowed near one.
You know, I think he's following the old, I got to be me. And
well, that's going to earn me one choice. That's going to earn me at least one choice tweet from Donald, I suspect.
I think I've already received mine tonight. He was just letting me know that Kellyanne was here in the audience and he was out in Nevada and nobody was watching his thumbs. And that became apparent soon thereafter. Charles, great to see you.
My pleasure.
Well, there was a long back and forth tonight when the moderator asked about how both campaigns have addressed the issue of race and policing. Watch this. That's fascinating. Joining me now, attorney and Trump supporter David Wohl and former Democratic National Committee spokesman Mo Alifi. Great to see you both.
Hey.
That was extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, you don't hear the arguments that articulately bounce back and forth that often in today's debate, which tends to descend into ugly places when you go on, to race in general and race in the police as well. David, your thoughts?
Tim Kaine basically said no stop, no frisk, and if we get skyrocketing murder rates, oh well, because I don't want to offend those people. I thought there was a tremendous counterpunch by Pence in that regard. What he said was, you know what, those people you're talking about offending, those are the victims of the people who aren't stopped, aren't frisked, and carry guns and carry knives and end up killing people in the inner city. So you balance it. I mean, are you talking about worrying about offending people and not so much worrying about them dying at the hands of people who aren't stopped and frisked? I mean, Rudy Giuliani proved it, Megan. I mean, the reality is stop and frisk works. If you're not carrying any weapons, you can go on your merry way. If you are carrying something and you're a felon in possession,
but
you get
what about
arrested.
the messaging, Mo, as a political matter? What about the messaging to the cops, right, in particular? Because you've got African Americans for whom this is a very big issue, and then you've got cops for whom this is a very big issue, and then the rest of society who watches it and is interested in it but can't possibly be as powerful to them as those who are directly affected by these policies.
Yeah, I think from just a purely political perspective, we could argue the substance, but just from a purely political perspective, there's really two things at play here. One is Donald Trump keeps saying he wants to do more outreach to the African-American community. This is a non-starter in the African-American community. Stop and frisk is one of the least popular policies in the African-American community. And the second point is I think the Kaine message in that exchange was very telling because it basically said, we are safer when there is more trust between the two sides.
Community policing, where they work together.
Right, when they actually work together. Stop and frisk is one of the most divisive tools in recent history. And so if we're going to actually find a way to eradicate this violence, we're going to have to bring the police and the community together. This is not the way to do it.
Murder rates in Chicago are skyrocketing. 3,000 shot this year. I mean, it's absolutely out of control. And the reality is everything that's tried has failed. So the reality is, yes, community policing. Get together with people and say, look, we're going to go up to suspicious people on the streets. We're going to stop and frisk them. If they've got nothing, we're going to apologize for bothering them. But you got to do something.
In New York,
they're getting killed
in New York,
in record numbers.
In New York, the murder rate has gone down since stop and frisk was ended. And that shows that this notion
that's just not true. That's just not true.
No, it's
2014 to 2015, it's gone up.
It's absolutely true that it has gone down.
No, it's gone up. It's gone up.
It has stopped.
I think the sheer numbers show a slight rise in the murder rate, but the numbers are not huge from 14 to 15, if memory serves. I'll have to fact check myself on that. But there's all different ways of looking at it, because you can look at violent crime, you can look at murders. It's a lovely exercise if you want to walk down that lane. But you tell me because Mike Pence, he sounded very thoughtful about it, and he sounded defensive of police, which is that typically a Democratic voting bloc? I mean, do police, they tend to be working class? They, a lot of the unions and so on, do they tend to vote Democratic? And do you think in an election like this, they'll do so?
I think historically, right? Historically, there are some issues that whoever has the D next to their name gets sort of an automatic, advantage, and whoever has the R next to their name gets an automatic advantage. I think on law enforcement, traditionally, has been something that Republicans have sort of started off with an advantage on. I don't know if that's the case now. To be honest, I'm not sure either side really has much of an advantage right now. I think the whole notion of safety and public safety and law enforcement and crime, right now both sides there's so much distrust on both sides that I don't know that there is a political advantage to be had other than to try to say, I'm going to keep you safe by bringing a community together.
Cops are a powerful voting bloc, Megan. What's happened in Dallas, 5 cops murdered. In New Orleans, 2 cops murdered. That is very powerful evidence on the Republican side to say, look, we need to support them. There are some bad cops every once in a while, but overall, and Pence had this right, overall they want to do good, they want to help, and they've got to be able to.
Before we go, Tim Kaine got some guff tonight for interrupting too many people, and I have to ask you, Mo, whether he interrupted this critical moment that you shared with him years ago. Watch, you tell me whether he was interrupting you or whether he just let this play out as it should have, as you married your beautiful bride.
He did a great job that night. We're still together, so at least that, whether or not you agree with him politically, he does this well.
So you weren't in the middle of all the days of and so do you.
No interrupting. There was no speak now or forever hold your peace.
And that was beautiful. Congratulations.
That's right. Congratulations. That was very lovely.
I'm a lucky man.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you.
Well, there were also some fierce exchanges tonight on the Iranian nuclear program, on terrorism, and on our domestic security. Nobody did this except for me. Let's start with that last point. Watch.
Senator.
Joining us now, 2 former White House insiders, Mark Thiessen, who's an American Enterprise Institute scholar and a Fox News contributor who served during the Bush administration, and Austin Goolsbee, who's an economics professor at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, previously served as President Obama's former chief economist. Good to see you both. Mark, what'd you think?
So, I mean, what he said about Iran was completely and totally untrue. There were tons of foreign policy whoppers in this debate. But number one, Hillary Clinton didn't negotiate the deal. John Kerry did. And number two, it didn't eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program. It legalized it.
Over and over. I just had this debate with Brian Fallon, where I was pressing him on the fact that she's claiming it's stopped, that the program has been stopped, it's been eliminated, and that's just not the case.
No, it's not the case at all.
Here's the sound. Here, let's just play it so they know what we're talking about.
Except it hasn't. It's been legalized. It hasn't been eliminated. What the deal did was it reduced their nuclear stockpile of materials and it lengthened their breakout time for when they could have a deal. But it expires in 15 years. And in the meantime, Iran gets to keep its entire nuclear infrastructure. They get to continue developing ballistic missiles. They've had 4 ballistic missile tests since the deal was signed. So they get to develop the missiles to one day deliver the nuclear weapons. And oh, by the way, we gave them $150 billion with which to fund all of this. So far from eliminating Iran's nuclear program, it actually makes it more likely that 15 years from now they're going to be a nuclear weapons
Let's
state.
Stop there and go to Austin on that. Austin, why is what Mark just said
offense,
not
that's
correct?
Not correct at all. Look, as you might imagine, the negotiation and the treaty is far more complex than just a one-dimensional thing. You can develop nuclear weapons on multiple tracks. There are uranium bombs and plutonium bombs. The plutonium, the entire highway was shut down. They filled the plutonium devices and development with concrete. The international inspectors have said there is no way that the plutonium channel is completely shut. The uranium channel, which I might add they had 5,000 centrifuges for during the Bush administration, has been stalled and put off for at least 15 years. So if you're going to say, okay, they have these centrifuges and 15 years from now they can come back and try to reignite them, fine, we can have that debate. But to make the argument that somehow this treaty enabled their nuclear weapons program when their nuclear weapons program started and got to 5,000 centrifuges under the old regime, it's just totally misleading.
But it's a fact check on whether eliminated was correct, because he said it 3 or 4 times. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, he did. And also, I mean, the truth is they continue to keep their nuclear stockpile, and they've had, in fact, we just found out that they had a secret deal that we didn't know about between the Obama administration and the Iranians that allowed them, because they were going to be in violation of even getting rid of that low enriched uranium, that they had to change the deal before else they were going to be out of compliance.
I just want to move on to another point.
We can have a negotiation with somebody.
Hold on, Austin. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. What was the other whopper you
Well, the other whopper is just, I mean, he said, quote, terrorist threat has been decreased on her watch. I mean, good grief. Has he looked at the news in the last few months? I mean, the fact is, when Hillary Clinton came into office in 2009, ISIS was completely defeated in Iraq. In fact, Joe Biden was running around saying Iraq was going to be one of the great achievements of the Obama administration. And then today, ISIS is all over the world. We've got attacks in Paris, Brussels, Nice, San Bernardino, Orlando. They have carried out, according to CNN analysis, 143 attacks in 29 countries that have killed 2,043 people since Barack Obama declared them the JV team. How is that terrorism being decreased?
Austin?
Look, Megyn, we can have a foreign policy negotiation. On the terrorist attacks, you fail to remember, I think, that the primary thing that the Republicans were criticizing was al-Qaeda through the whole early part of the Obama administration. They took out Osama bin Laden. They took out the infrastructure of al-Qaeda. The terrorism coming from Central Asia and Afghanistan has dramatically reduced. It's true we have had a rise of ISIS-sponsored terrorism in Europe, but many of the terrorist actions that you described in the United States were homegrown terrorists. And so the policies of the Trump administration are not based on a intellectual debate like the one that Mark and I are having. Donald Trump's nuclear expertise amounts to using a microwave oven. They have nonsense policies. And in this debate, I don't think we got into enough detail on those policies.
Yeah, I know. All right. Oh, you meant the debate we just watched. I thought you were criticizing me. If you're criticizing
no, the debate we
what
just
we saw
watched
earlier, that's a totally different story. Austin, great to see you. Mark, you too.
Thanks, Megyn.
Up next, Chris Direwalt and Tucker Carlson are here on how folks are reacting to what the candidates said about dollars and cents, the economy. Oh, something shocking coming up. Names about the economy already being run through the fact-checking mill, so we called up two of our favorite mill workers, Fox Digital politics editor Chris Direwalt, along with Daily Caller founder and co-host of Fox and Friends, Tucker Carlson. Good to see you both.
Howdy.
So that was just one of the many, exchanges that they went on the economy. They hit everything, little foreign policy and so on. Tucker, overall, did this thing move the needle? Did it move the needle at all?
It's pretty hard to know. I mean, it wasn't bad for Trump. I think it's pretty clear that Pence won. But in winning, did he benefit anyone more than himself? I don't know. I do think there's a pretty large reservoir of voters who are open to voting for Trump, but they're afraid of him. They think he's, they think he's flaky, basically, and volatile. And did Pence's kind of calm, rational performance help? I don't know. I think on the Kaine side, clearly he was not there to win. I really don't think he was. This was a human sacrifice. He wanted to remind, the demographics that they're worried about in terms of turnout, which would be African American, Latino, and single female voters, that Trump is really bad. And in case you somehow didn't hear this, in the last year he said these awful things about you. That's what this was about.
Yep. And did he do that effectively? I mean,
the number one goal, it's the Hippocratic oath as it applies to running mates. First, do no harm. Whatever else you do, don't do any harm. Tim Kaine didn't help himself. Mike Pence helped himself. And probably a lot of doctrinaire conservative Republicans will have watched Mike Pence and said, I like that guy. Maybe someone will say, I wish he was the top of the ticket, but he will be at least reassuring to those sort of
How about Kellyanne's suggestion that Kaine did do harm by... She was suggesting it was sexist to interrupt the moderator.
Yeah.
Not feeling that.
I mean, look, this is the vice presidential debate. Vice presidential debates are remembered only when there is a catastrophic failure of some kind or some just astonishing thing happens. I served with Jack Kennedy. You, sir, are no Jack Kennedy, said Lloyd Benson.
But even in that race, Dan Quayle won.
And it don't matter. It ain't matter. That's just the truth.
Right. It might help remind people that on the merits, it's pretty tough to defend the last 8 years on the foreign policy side and on the economic side. I mean, clearly, and I think you saw Pence allude to this, but we are facing some really ominous signs on the horizon. I mean, who doesn't think there's a debt crisis, at least potentially coming our way? Yep. And that's the result of decisions that the people in power made. And so maybe to the extent that he reminds people of that, it's got to help Trump, no?
And I think maybe...
Well, the nonpartisan fact-checkers who look into it suggest that Trump's plan is going to add $5 trillion to the debt.
Well, sure, I mean...
so I don't know.
But it's not...
Tell me whether it helps him.
But it's not... I mean, you could certainly make that case. I don't think it's a crazy thing to say. But it's not a contest between two incumbents. Really, all Trump needs to do is say, these people have failed, and I'm not so scary that you can't vote for me.
Is it just me, or is like, listen, temperament is important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nuclear codes and all that. If Trump is a misogynist, that's important.
Right.
Half the country happens to be women.
What?
Yeah, and many of the other half has little
This could
girls.
be big.
Right. This is big. But we've heard precious little about ISIS and terror and threats to the homeland and things that actually have people very concerned.
If there is one thing that Donald Trump could have been helped by in this debate, it was if he watched Mike Pence closely to see how you do that. So I absorb the blow, you attack me, okay, and you say, whatever, you're a jerk, and then you pivot it. And he did it on emails, and he did it on Iran, and he did it on ISIS. And time again, when the attack came on Pence, he ably absorbed and deflected. So if Trump was watching tonight and he was taking notes, this is how you do that.
He clearly was.
Right.
His notepad begins with a T and ends with an R.
It's got a little bird on it.
But I wonder, I mean, there one point stuck to me because I'm interested in this subject, but it was very revealing. You saw Tim Kaine say our number one priority in our immigration policy is reuniting families, which is great for the families.
That was a myth.
But of course, the point of your immigration policy is to help your country. And if the Trump people, I think, are clever, they will exploit that because that is one of the central.
But Trump's already got the people to whom immigration is important. He said they're already in his camp, are they not? But I want to ask you this. You can answer that, and then talk about the fact that we have a presidential debate happening in 5 days.
Yes.
5 days.